All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for Tavshin Pei, our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilson family of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Sherman Drushos this year as a zichus for Besoros Tovos for Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Stephen Terry Zinn, in honor of the birth of their granddaughter, Devorah Eliana Zinn, and the loving memory of Dr. Zinn's father, Bonim Tzvi Ben Chaim Zichron Lebracha, Shmuel Rabin Karabkin, B'schus Refuah Shlema for Rabin's cousin serving in the IDF, Binyamin Chaim Pesach Ben Moshe Chana, and a commission of the yard site of Rabin's mother, Pesa Mira Bas Chaim Zichron Lebracha. Dr. Moshe and Ellen Gevant, in memory of Dr. Gevant's parents, Yaakov Meir ben Moshe Leib, and Shena Bas Abba, Zichron B'Racha. Dr. Bezad and Yamina Salfer of Los Angeles, in the merit of a Refuah Shalema for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya. And our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Sammy and Malka Esterson, in commemoration of the 30th yard site of Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Zechat Tzadik Livrach. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, the families Ein Nechama, all of those who need a refuah should have one together. Kol Cholei Yisrael Kodesh Baruch Hu Shnei Meretz Hashem, return our hostages, B'Shalom and B'Karov, and our holy soldiers should be successful. B'Chol Ma'aseh Yedehem. But with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, a really exciting and incredible daf ahead of us. Today's daf is Kuf Mem Zayin. We are starting 147. We are starting at the Mishnah on Kuf Mem Vav Amud Beis 146b. Shchiv Mira, Shekasav Kol Nechasav La'achir. So Shchiv Mira is on his deathbed, and he goes ahead and he writes all of his property to someone else. Right? So Reuben's on his deathbed, writes all of his property to someone else. And what happened? The Shir Karka Kol Shehu. Now, in this case, he did something very interesting. The Shchiv Mira retained a piece of property for himself. So whereas normally we've been speaking about the case of a Shchiv Mira, where he gifts away all of his property, in this case, halacha l'maisa, he's gone ahead and retained something. So he's retained something for himself. Then what's the halacha? The Gemara says, Matanasa kayemes. Ultimately, his gift endures. Now, both say, now, what does that mean? Matanasa kayemes. If you take a look at the Rashbam, the lashon of the Rashbam is matanaso matana. It is about 8 lines into the wide lines. Matanaso matana. Hol v'sher la'atzmo harihu kimatnas bari. Hilchach bein omed mechalyo bein meis matanaso kayemes. The shalom midaga misa nasan. So we'll say the way that a gift of a Shchiv Mira works is as follows. The assumption is when a person is on their deathbed and they gift property. Why are they gifting the property? Why are they giving it away? Why? Because they're going to die. So almost as if the way halacha views the gift is a matana with a t'nai. It's really on condition, right? So Reuben's a Shchiv Mira. He gifts his property to Shimon. The understanding is that Reuben's doing this because he's dying, which then means what? What happens if Baruch Hashem, Reuben experiences a tremendous refuah shalema? What's the halacha? The gift reverses. Reuven gets back his property, because from Reuven's perspective, I only gifted it because I thought I was going to die. Now, Baruch Hashem, I had a refuah shalema. So therefore, again, the property goes back to Reuven. Now, on the other hand, if Reuven goes ahead and gifts property to Shimon, but retains something for himself. So if Reuben is retaining something for himself, what does that show? It's going to Mishnah. What does that show? That Reuben's thinking, look, I may have a refuah shlema, I may recover from this, and therefore again, kind of hedging my bets a little bit. I'm holding some property for myself. Therefore, again, in that kind of case, his intention is to give an unequivocal gift to Shimon. Whether Reuben recovers or doesn't recover, the gift stands. So, as I see here, this model in the case of a Shchiv Mira, if a Shchiv Mira is giving away everything, then it's understood that is a deathbed bequest, right? That is a deathbed gift, and therefore it's almost al t'nai that he dies, which means if he recovers, the gift reverses. On the other hand, if he gifts something, so let's say Reuben gifts something to Shimon, but retains something for himself, the fact that he's retaining something for himself shows that he's recognizing this possibility that he's going to recover. Right? Therefore, he's holding on to property himself, which then says that the gift that he's giving to Shimon is not a gift with a t'nai, but rather, again, it's just a regular gift. It's just a regular gift, and therefore, whether he dies or whether he recovers, his gift ultimately to Shimon stands. Incredible. Lo shir kaka kol shehu. Therefore, again, if Reuven told, this is the end of the sentence, if Reuven goes ahead and If Reuven gives away all of his property, ein matanasa kayemes. Saying matanasa kayemes means if Reuven gives away all of his property and then he recovers, the gift reverses. The gift reverses, the gift comes back to Reuven because it's understood that the only reason Reuven gifted this property was because he thought he was going to die, and therefore again halacha l'maaseh this is considered to be a gift al t'nai, and therefore halacha l'maaseh it reverses in the event of recovery. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows. So if you, fine. So the Rashan goes into this a little bit more, but this is our purpose today. So it says the Gemara, Man tano da azlina basra umdana. So we'll say, so now interestingly enough, remember, Reuven is our shchimira. What is Reuven saying when he makes this gift? What's his verbiage when he makes the? What is he saying? What is he saying? The answer is just saying here, this is a gift. Remember again, the power of a shchimira is that he does not have to go ahead and engage in any formal kinyanim, right? The words of a shchimira have the effect of a kinyan. So interestingly enough, Reuven himself is never saying anything, right? It's not like Reuven is going ahead and saying, I'm hereby giving you this gift, because I'm going to die. Reuven doesn't say anything. So I'll say, interestingly enough, this Mishnah is based on the concept of umdina. What's umdina? Umdina, I forgot the good English word for umdina. Like circumstantial evidence. Right? Circumstantial evidence is a better word. I had this yesterday. Okay, we're going to call it umdina. Umdina means, we'll call it intent. Okay, good. So we'll call it circumstantial intent. Let's go ahead and write circumstantial intent. In other words, if you notice in this case over here, Reuven the shchimira is on his deathbed, right? So now Reuven is not articulating a t'nai. He's not saying, Shimon, I'm hereby giving you this property on the condition that I die, but if I recover, the gift reverses. He doesn't say that. We intuit that based on his circumstantial intent. That's called umdina. So the Gemara says, who is the opinion that says that we follow umdina? Mantana doesn't live umdina. Aram Nachman, Rabbi Shimon ben Nasi, Rabbi Shimon ben Nasi. What does Rabbi Shimon ben Nasi? Disanya. This is an interesting case. Haisha halach b'no lebedinas hayam v'shama shemes b'no v'ama v'kasav kol nechasav la'acher v'acher kach ba b'no. So watch this. Reuven has a son, or it's called Yaakov. Yaakov has a son, Reuven, and Reuven went overseas, and Yaakov heard Nebuch that his son died. So what did Yaakov do? He wrote all of his property to someone else. He gifted all of his property to someone else. And then what happened? Baruch Hashem, he was wrong. Reuven is still alive, and he comes back. What's the halacha? Matanos matano. Tanakama says, a gift is a gift is a gift. Sorry, Yaakov gifted away his property. Nothing more to talk about. Rabbi Shimon ben Nasi Omer, ein matanos matano. Rabbi Shimon ben Nasi says, no, the gift is not a valid gift. Why not? Shel mali hayu yodeh shebeno kayum lo hayakosvan. For had Yaakov known that Reuven was still alive, of course, Yaakov would have never gifted the gift. In other words, so what do you see from here? Rabbi Shimon ben Nasi follows umdina, circumstantial intent. It's clear that the only reason why Yaakov gifted away the property to someone else because he thought his son was dead. Now, Baruch Hashem, it turns out his son is not dead. Therefore, halacha l'maaseh, the gift reverses. The gift reverses. Beautiful. So therefore, the Gemara's first suggestion, Rab Nachman's suggestion is, our Mishnah follows Rab Shimon ben Nasi, who holds of umdina. Rab Sheshes Amar, no. Rab Shimon Shazuri. It's not Rab Shimon ben Nasi, rather again it's Rab Shimon Shazuri. What does Rab Shimon Shazuri say? Disanya, Barishana Hayu Omrim, in the beginning he used to say, Hayotse Bakolar, Va'amar Kisu Get Leishti, Hare Elu Yichtavu V'yitnus. What's the interesting case over here? Let's say again, Reuven is being let out to be executed. And on his way out to be executed, he says to a group of people, or to two people, Kisvu Get Leishti, write a get for my wife. Now, the only one problem, what did he forget? He forgot to say tnu. He forgot to say give it. Right? So he said write it, but he forgot to say give it. So what's the halacha? So Shimon Shazuri said that Allah Lamaisa, the witnesses, they can write it and give it. Now we'll say why? Why? Because we understand, even though he just said write it, it's understood that what does he want? What does he want us to do? He wants us to write it and give it. I will say, by the way, why is Reuven, who's being let out to be executed, why is he interested in divorcing his wife? Why? Because again, halacha l'maaseh, the simplest answer to this would be to avoid yibum. To avoid yibum. Okay, so here's another example of umdina. of intuiting circumstantial intent. So when Chazru Lomar, Chazal added onto this and they said, so we'll say this is true even if what? Even if halach l'maisa, a person is going ahead and traveling a long distance, a dangerous journey, and before he gets on the caravan or before he gets on the boat, he says kisu get leishti, but he forgot to say tnu, that halach l'maisa, it works to go ahead. We can go ahead and use umdina, and we could go ahead and write it and deliver it. Rav Shimon Shazuri Omer af hamasukon. Rav Shimon Shazuri says even someone who is like a shrimira, or someone who's in a very dangerous situation, who goes ahead and writes or says kisvu, we could interpret that to mean kisvu utnu. So the point over here is, what do you see? What do you see? The Rashbam says over here, Afam Sukkah, 3 lines up from the bottom, Karov Lemisa, Shedaito Sheyichtavu V'yitnu, the lifters Ishtamin Hayibum Niskavin. So we'll say, so you see over here that Rav Shimon Shazuri added on even Mesukkan, even someone who's in a dangerous situation, right, dangerous, about to die, we can go ahead and write and deliver the get. So we'll say, so now let's pause here for just a moment. So what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah spoke about the concept that if Reuven is on his deathbed, he's a shchimira, he makes a gift, and then he recovers, the gift reverses. Now again, obviously, it depends on what he gifted. That's only true if he gifted his entire estate, because then it's clear that he thinks he's going to die, that's why he's giving everything away. If he retains something for himself, any gift that he made stands whether or not he recovers. But in a classic shchimira case, where the shchimira is gifting away all of his property, should he recover, the gift reverses and comes back to him. What's the logic behind that? Because halacha l'maisa, we understand that it's almost like a gift made al t'nai, that the shchimira assumes he's going to die, and therefore his gift is predicated on his eventual / immediate, or very, very soon to occur, death. So therefore, even though he never articulates that, we intuit that. So who is the opinion that holds that we base transactions, or we interpret transactions based on circumstantial intent? So what we call in halacha umdina. So two different opinions. Rav Nachman attributes it to Rav Shimon ben Menasya, and Rav Sheshes attributes it to Rav Shimon Shazuri. Now the Gemara just asks why each opinion doesn't follow the view of the other. For Rav Nachman, my time lo mokim like Rav Shimon Shazuri. Rav Nachman, who holds like Rav Shimon Menasya, why does he not say that's Rav Shimon Shazuri? Shiny Hasan Amar Kisvu. Because Rav Nachman will say the case of Rav Shimon Shazuri will say is not a case of umdina. It's not a case of umdina. What did the husband say in the get case? What did he say? He said kisvu. Okay, he forgot to say tnu. He'll say when a husband says write a get, what does he mean? What does he mean? Right? You don't need umdina for that, right? In other words, there's no point in writing a get if it's not going to be delivered. That's not umdina. That's just okay. He didn't get out a full sentence, but lamaisa, you don't need umdina over there. So Rav Sheshes, my time alone, look at Rav Shimon Menasya. So Rav Sheshes holds Rav Shimon Shazuri by the get case. Why does he not hold Rav Shimon Menasya? Rabbi Shmuel Silber by the case of where the son went overseas. So the Gemara said, listen to this. My time alone, look at Rabbi Shmuel Menasya. Umdina demuchach shiny. So we'll say, because he holds the case of Rabbi Shimon Menasya is what we call an umdina demuchach. See, I will say, in the world of umdinas, in the world of circumstantial intent, there's different levels. So there's something called an umdina demuchach. An umdina demuchach means it's almost explicitly clear, right? When Yaakov's son Reuven goes overseas, and Yaakov hears that Reuven died, and after he hears that Reuven died, he goes in and he gives his property to someone else. It is so clear to us what is happening over here. Yaakov thinks that his heir died, and therefore he's assigning the property to someone else. He would have never done this had he known that Reuven is alive. That's called an umdina demuchach. You know, there's umdina, which is like circumstantial intent, which maybe you can interpret in different ways, and then there's umdina demuchach, which is explicitly clear circumstantial intent. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Man tana lahadu tana rabbanan." So who is the author of? So we'll say, here's what's interesting, by the way, right? So what's interesting is, everyone agrees that the Mishnah, our Mishnah, is working based on the concept of umdina, right? Because remember, again, the shchimira at no point in time is ever explicitly articulating, I'm giving away my property because I'm about to die. He never says that. Now, obviously, if he says that, there's nothing to talk about, right? If Reuven's on his deathbed and he says, I know I'm going to die, therefore I'm gifting away my property, it is clear that he's only giving away the property because he's going to die, and therefore, if Emir Hashem, he should have it. If it was Shalema, the gift reverses. the chiddush of the Mishnah is that even though the Umdana never says this, right? The Umdana never articulates any of this, but it's understood. We intuit this into the transaction that the motivation for why he's giving this gift is because he's going to die, and therefore, if he recovers, the gift reverses. So the Mishnah clearly is operating under the principle of Umdana. So now our only question was, who is it based on? Okay, so now we have two different opinions who both espouse the concept of Umdana, Rosh Shazuri and Rosh Menasya. Beautiful. Now the Gemara says, Man Tanalahu the Tanabanas. Who is the author of the following opinion? Hari Shahaya, interesting case here. Hari Shahaya Chol Umuto Bamita Va'amrulo Nichasecha Lemi. So listen to this. Ruvain's in his deathbed. Right, Reuven's in his deathbed, and they ask him, Reuven, who do you want your property to go to? And Reuven responds with the following, both at top of Kuf Mem Zayin 147a. And Reuven responds, Domeli Shieshli ben Achshav. Domeli Shieshli ben. You know, I heard that I have a son. Obviously not a very close family, right? I heard that I have a son. Rashi said that Rashbam says, "Dome kolomar kimeduma hayisi sheishli ben achshav." Right? Dome sheishli ben achshav she'enli ben nechasen ploni. So essentially, what Rebbein says like this: I heard that I had a son. Right? I had a son. Now I heard that that son died. That son passed away, and therefore, because I have no son, nechasai leploni, my property should go to Shimon. Okay, or Hayachola Mutabamita, Reuven, right? Reuven the Shechina was dying in bed. Vamrlo, and they asked him, the Chasav Lemi, Reuven, who do you want your property to go to? Amr Lahem, so he said to them, Domesh Ishti Mu'beres. You know, my wife was pregnant, and obviously, again, had that pregnancy gone to full term, my wife would have birthed a child. My property would have gone to that child. But now my wife is not pregnant. I hereby assign my property to Shimon. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, what happens? Strange turn of events. Benodalo sheyesh laben. And then it turns out that what? It turns out that Reuven was mistaken. His son is alive, or his wife is still pregnant. So in other words, you see what happened over here? He's on his deathbed. I heard I had a son, but my son died. Or I heard my wife was pregnant, but unfortunately she miscarried the pregnancy. And therefore I assigned my property to Shimon, a third party. And then it turns out, no. He does have a son who's alive. His wife is still pregnant, Baruch Hashem. So what's the halacha? Ein matana so matana. The gift to Shimon is not a valid gift. Which I will say again, Umdana, right? Because it's clear to us based on circumstantial intent. And again, this is even a little bit stronger because here he really is articulating it, right? Even though he's not articulating it explicitly, right? He's not saying, I would have given the gift to my son, right? But now that my son is dead, I'm giving it to Shimon. But again, it's almost like he's thinking out loud, right? But as he's thinking out loud, we could intuit what his circumstantial intent is. Had his son been alive, would have given it to his son. Had he known that his wife was still pregnant, he would have given it to the unborn fetus. Or we can't give it to unborn fetus, you see what that is. But he would have given it to that child when it was born. So therefore the Gemara says we intuit circumstantial intent, and therefore again the matana to Shimon is not a matana. So who is that? Whose opinion is that? Lema Reb Shimon ben Menasya. So that would be Reb Shimon ben Menasya velo Rabbanan. And not the Rabbanan. To which the Gemara says, no. Afilu tema Rabbanan doma shiny. So the Rabbanan will say, no, so the Gemara says, it's Reb Shimon ben Menasya, because Reb Shimon ben Menasya holds of Umdina, and not the Rabbanan who don't hold of Umdina. To which the Gemara says, no, this case is different. This case could even be the Rabbanan. Why could it be the Rabbanan? Because they will say there's something different in this case. What's different in this case? One word. What's the one word? Doma. It appears to me. The fact that Reuven is kind of going through this process, right? In other words, remember again, he's on his deathbed. They come to him, they say, Reuven, who do you want your property to go to? And Reuven says, I thought I used to have a son. Now that I no longer have a son, the property should go to Shimon. So I will say, even the Rabbanon who don't normally hold of Umdina say the fact that he's talking this out indicates to us what his clear intent is, right? It appears the Lashon Doma, it appears to me, it's clear that he's saying to us, although he's not saying it explicitly, but he's saying that if my son were alive, it would go to my son. Now that my son's not alive, it'll go to Shimon. So which is clear that when his son turns out to be alive, the property should, or the gift should reverse from Shimon. Okay, but the Karila, my Karila. So it seems to be pretty clear that even if you don't hold of Umdina, clearly this would be a case where we recognize what the intent of Ruvain is. So what's the Havamina? So the Gemara says, Sarehu de Kamitgar. So I might have thought that when Ruvain is talking this out, maybe Ruvain is not telling us this information for transactional purposes, but rather what is Ruvain doing? Ruvain is kind of just thinking out loud. He's talking about his pain. I had a son. My son passed away. My wife was pregnant. The pregnancy was lost. So maybe he's just kind of talking out loud a little bit, but lav dafka in any type of legal ramification or repercussion. So Kamash Malon, the Gemara says, good. Kamash Malon, that we understand that really what he's articulating over here is his intent. His intent, and therefore in this kind of case, even if you don't hold of Umdina, everyone would agree that halacha l'maisa, the gift does reverse. Incredible. So the Gemara I suppose that's therefore again. So therefore halacha l'maisa. And by the way, this Mishnah is also codified halacha l'maisa. That essentially when a shchiv mira goes ahead and makes a gift, it is understood that that gift is made al t'nai. It's made with a condition. What's the condition? That the gift is valid if I die, but if I recover, the gift reverses. But even that's only true when the shchiv mira is gifting away everything, because the fact that he's giving away everything shows that he thinks he's going to die. If he retains something for himself, that means that he holds that there's a possibility that he's going to recover. If he holds this possibility that he's going to recover, then the gift is not given out t'nai, but rather again it's a regular gift and therefore stands even if he recovers. Now, even though the shchimera is not explicitly articulating this t'nai, we nevertheless circumstantially intuit, or we intuit his circumstantial intent. What is that called in halacha? That's called umdina. So we accept the concept of umdina. Two different sources or two different opinions who both hold the umdina. Rav Shimon ben Asya, Rav Shimon ben Shizuri. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful, that's all halacha l'maisa. Nebo said the Gemara asked a fascinating question. Amrav Zera Amrav, minayin lematna shchimera shimin Torah. So I said, now the Gemara says, by the way, how do you know, right? We've been doing this now for a while. We're speaking about this, that a shchimera has incredible transactional power, right? That divrei shchimera kiksuvin v'chimsurin damu, right? The words of a shchimera are as if they are written and given over. So by the way, the Gemara says, from where do we know that the matana, that a shchimera has the ability to convey property minat midaraisa. So that this is a biblical right that the shchimera has. We know some shenemar va'avartem misnachalasa lebito. Pasuk says actually interestingly enough by the inheritance of a daughter va'avartem misnachalasa lebito yesh lecha ha'avar acheres shehi kizu. Now both say the pasuk itself is written in a longer form, right? It could have just said Nachalasa lebito. Right, the inherited man doesn't have a son; the inheritance goes to his daughter. The fact that it writes it in an elongated form indicates to us that you can make another drasha from this phrase. Yesh lacha avar achar shikizu. There is another transfer of property that is like this one. Ve'ezo zu, and what type of transfer are we talking about? Matna shchimira. So we'll say from the long form of this pasuk, we can see there's another form of transference of property. What is that? The matana of shchimira. The shchimira also has the ability to transfer. I will say, remember again, because it's a matana, this matana could also disrupt the normal progression of inheritance law, right? The shchimira could do anything. So from here you see the shchimira could go ahead and transfer property. Okay. Rav Nachman Amra Baravu. From here, unesatem es nachaloso la'achiv. Once again, Abba said this is talking about the idea that brothers can inherit as well. But once again, this pasuk is written in the long form. It just could have said nachalasa la'achiv. Why does it write it in the long form? Once again, yesh lecha nesin achara shehi kizu, to teach us that there is another act of giving like this one. Ve'izo zu, and ultimately again, what type of giving is that? Zu matna shchemira. So again, interestingly enough, Interestingly enough, halacha l'maisa, from both of these psukim, the fact that they're written in the elongated form gives us the ability to make a drasha from them. Okay, that there's another type of havar, there's another type of giving over, which is the giving over of a shchimira. Rav Nachman, my time alamar me'avartim. So why does Rav Nachman, who learns out from unesatem es nachaloso, why does he not learn out from havartim? Homi b'ayli l'chid Rabbi, because he needs havartim for Rabbi. What does Rabbi say? Disanya Rabbi Omer, bekulon nem rabba hen nesina v'kan emra ha'avara. You know, normally the lashon by inheritance, whenever the Torah talks about inheritance, Torah uses lashon of nesina, of giving. Yet when it comes to the inheritance of a daughter, the Torah uses a lashon of ha'avara, of almost like a passing over, a moving over. Why? Because we'll say, what's the challenge? When a daughter inherits, not a challenge, but what's the reality? When a daughter inherits, it's very possible that property will be moved over from tribe to tribe. We saw this before, because since halacha l'maisa, again, when a woman dies, her daughter or her husband or her son inherit her, and it's quite possible that her husband and her son are from a different tribe than her own family. Therefore, their inheritance, by definition, could potentially move over tribal property from one shevet to another shevet. That's why the Torah, when it talks about the inheritance of a daughter, uses the lashon of v'havartem, a moving over of inheritance. Okay, incredible. So Mar goes weiter. Rabbi Zera, first wide line about Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Rabbi Zera, my time me unesatem. So Rabbi Zera, why does he not learn it out from unesatem, which is the inheritance of the brother? Archei dekrahu. As Rabbi Zera just feels the pasuk is just written in the normal fashion. It doesn't really leave itself open for a drasha. Okay. Rabbi Menashe Bar Yomi Amri Hachas. So interestingly enough, so whereas they differ on the sources, interestingly enough, so far the prevalent school of thought is that matnas shchimira, the ability of someone on their deathbed to convey property just verbally, is a da'oraisa. Is it da'oraisa? So some more sources. So Amar Nashimar Yami Amri Hacha B'Yomim Haim Chala Chizkiyo Lamos. So we'll say here, this is incredible. So now this is not from Chumash, this is from Navi, but still a scriptural source. So it was in those days. Chizkiyo was going to die. Chizkiyahu was going to die. So what happened? Vayavo elav Yeshayahu ben Amos hanavi. So who came to visit him? Yeshayahu ben Amos. And Vayomer elav Kamar Hashem. He says to him. So Hashem says. So Yeshayahu says, Hashem has commanded, Tzav leveisecha, command your household, Kimes ata, because you are going to die. So not the best etiquette for a Bikur Cholim visit, right? But nevertheless, again, so remember again, we know the backdrop to this story, right? But this is the famous Maisa. Why is Chizkiyahu dying? Why is Chizkiyahu dying? Because Chizkiyahu refused to marry. He refused to marry and have children because he saw prophetically that if he had a son, his son would be a tremendous Rasha. So he decided not to marry. So Yeshayahu the Navi comes to him and says, "You're going to die." So remember again, the Gemara Maseches Brachos highlights the whole story over here. So Yeshayahu says, "You're going to die." Chizkiyahu says, "Why?" Yeshayahu says, "Because you refused to marry and have a child." So Chizkiyahu says, "I'll tell you why I did that, because I saw prophetically my son was going to be a Rasha." So remember again, Yeshayahu responds to him and he says, why are you getting involved in God's plans? Your job is to be normal, get married, try to have kids. That's your job. That's your job. Don't try to run the world. Leave that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Chizkiyahu says, turns to Yeshayahu, and he says, Yeshayahu, I heard that you have a single daughter, so why don't you give me your daughter as a wife? Yeshayahu says, I already told you, you're going to die. Too late, sorry. Right? Missed the opportunity, missed the prime, you're going to die. So Chizkiyahu turns back and he says something amazing. He says, I am a descendant of David HaMelech. And he says, I have a Mesorah from my Alter Zayda, from David HaMelech. And what's the Mesorah? Afilu cherev chada munachas al tzavaro sha'adam al yimana es atzam min arachem. The Mesorah I have from my Alter Zayda, from David HaMelech, is, even if there is a sharp sword against your neck, don't give up. Don't give up. So isn't that incredible? That the grandchildren of David HaMelech, if there's one thing that they retained from their grandfather, is the yesod, don't give up. Don't give up. No matter how difficult or how bleak things look in life, don't give up. So Yeshayahu is very moved by Chizkiyahu's words. He gives Chizkiyahu his daughter in marriage, and they have a son. That son was a man by the name of Menashe. Menashe was one of the longest serving monarchs. He reigned for 55 years. For 33 of them he was a Rasha. For 22 of them he did tshuva, right? And again, he died about tshuva, which was incredible. But unfortunately, the first part of his reign was a very dark time for Klal Yisrael. In any event, the point over here is, I would say, just also to highlight how beautiful it is. Sometimes the things you do in life can inspire future generations. And we have to recognize that we set a tremendous example for our children and our grandchildren and how about great-grandchildren through what we say and also through what we do. As soon as we go through life and we do things and we think that it doesn't matter, but the truth is there's always eyes. Besides Chesed Baruch Hu is watching what we do, there's so many sets of familial eyes on us also. And you never know how our family learns from the way that we behave and what it is that we do. A tremendous yisod. So the Gemara goes weiter. The point over here is that the Gemara is quoting this is to show us v'lo tehei tzava v'lo tichya. I'm sorry, kimei sata v'lo tichya b'tzava ba'alma. So what do you see from here? You see that Yeshayahu says to Chizkiyahu, command your household. Command your household. So what do you see from here? That Chizkiyahu has the ability to convey property or to do whatever he has to do just through what? Tzava, through verbal declaration. So from here you see that the words of a shchimera affect halachic realities. Rabbi Cheskel mehacha, Rabbi Cheskel learns it from here. Va'achitofel ra'a kilo nasta etzaso. So we'll say Achitofel. So a little bit, just quick background. Remember, Avshalom, the son of David HaMelech, rebels against his father. When that rebellion occurred, some of David's closest advisors went and followed Avshalom. Amongst them, Achitofel. Achitofel was one of the advisors of David HaMelech. He went and he followed Avshalom. Now, we'll say, now understand what Achitofel gave Avshalom. Rashbam brings this down. Achitofel gave Avshalom a very important piece of advice. When David HaMelech was on the run, Achitofel said to Avshalom, crush him now. Crush David now. Because if David has a chance to regroup, you're going to lose. Avshalom did not listen to the advice of Achitofel, and when David ran away, he just allowed David to escape. So Achitofel saw that the rebellion was doomed. Now obviously he understood that when the rebellion was doomed, everyone who participated in the rebellion would be doomed as well. So what happened? It was an incredible Gemara. Achitofel ra'a kilo nasta etzaso. So Achitofel saw that Avshalom did not listen to his advice. Vayachavoshes chamoro. So he saddled his donkey. Vayelech el beiso el yiro. He went back home to his family. Vayitzav el beiso. He commanded his household. Vayechanek. And he killed himself. Achitofel took his own life because he recognized that he made a terrible, terrible mistake, and he thought he was beyond forgiveness for that mistake. Now, for our purposes, what do you see from here? So we'll say this is fascinating. Now, the Gemara is looking at Achitofel almost as like a shchivmira. Achitofel knew that he was going to take his own life. And what did he do? He commanded his family. So in other words, he made verbal designations, verbal gifts. So, and it worked. The Gemara says, B'tzava ba'alma. So this is quite interesting, because the Gemara again compares Achitofel to a shchim, because it's like a shchimira. Knows that he's going to die. Achitofel knew that he was going to take his own life, and therefore the Gemara uses this as a proof that halacha l'maisa tzava'as shchimira ultimately works. Okay, so we'll say we'll say now an incredible Gemara. Shloshah devarim tziva Achitofel banav. Achitofel commanded his sons regarding three things. Number one, al tiyu b'machlokes. So number one, do not be in a state of machlokes. We'll define what this means in just a moment. Val timur duba malchus based David. Do not go ahead and rebel against the malchus of David HaMelech. In other words, don't rebel against David. Timur duba malchus based David. The yom tov shalat seres barur zaruchitim. And literally again, if the yom tov of Shavuos, if it's clear outside, that's a good omen. Make sure to go ahead and plant wheat. So first of all, there's so much profundity over here. If you think about this idea of al tiyu b'machlokes, so the Maharsha comments on this, because if you think about it, the lashon over here is what is he trying to say? So we read it, we think there's okay, saying don't enter into machlokes. There's a better way to say that, right? The Maharsha points out, he could have just said al tachloku. don't engage in machlokes. What does it mean? Al tiyu b'machlokes. Don't be in machlokes. So the Maharsha himself says something so beautiful. He says, "Lefi shelapamim lo husar adam milachlok im chavero." Sometimes a person is not careful and gets thrown into machlokes. Kisha avra lavaderach aval amar atiyu osin gar meha machlokes. So what it means, al tiyu b'machlokes means try your best not to create machlokes. And I both say, sometimes machlokes finds you. Machlokes finds you, but do your best to try to avoid machlokes. To you, b'machlokes means try your best to be the kind of people that are machlokes averse. So as I was thinking that perhaps there's also another interpretation of this. Atiyub machlokes means don't be in machlokes. You're right, sometimes you can't avoid the fact that machlokes started. But every single person has a choice about whether or not to perpetuate machlokes. In other words, I can't necessarily decide, or I don't necessarily have a choice as to when discord begins, right? Someone starts up, someone creates machlokes, I might be drawn into it, and I may not have a choice. But every single person has a choice. When you're in that machlokes, do you go ahead and escalate or de-escalate? Do you perpetuate, or do you go ahead and hit the brakes? That you always have the choice. That's what it means. I'll tell you, b'machlokes. Sometimes I can't choose if there is machlokes, but I could choose whether or not I remain in that machlokes or not. Now let's say it is such a profound yisod. All of us have the choice of de-escalation or escalation. And that is true. This happens all the time in so many of our life relationships. I may not choose the fight. It may just occur around me. The machlok is around me. But do you escalate or do you de-escalate? That is your choice. That's what it means. I'll tell you, be machlokes. You're right. Ideally, don't start machlokes. Right? That's the Maharsha says. I'll tell you machlokes. Maharsha understands means don't be the kind of person who starts machlokes. True. But what do you do about the fact that sometimes I get drawn in? I'll tell you machlokes. Don't be the one who escalates. Don't be the one who perpetuates, but rather find the koach to hit the brakes, find the koach to de-escalate. Now I will say this last piece, by the way. So the next part, Al-Timrdu Machos Beis David, pretty solid advice, right? Do not rebel against the house of David HaMelech, right? They're chosen by God. Not a good idea to engage in machlokes, and obviously Achitofel is giving them first-hand advice. What about this last piece? The Yom Tov Shal Atzeres Baru Zaruchitim. So both say, so on the most basic level, this is a piece of agricultural advice, right? If the weather is nice on Shavuos, the weather is clear on Shavuos, that is a good omen for the wheat crop for the coming year. Plant wheat that day. I will say, but remember, think about this from yesterday's daf. What did we learn yesterday's daf? What's chita? Well, actually, it was technically 2 days ago, but we did it yesterday, right? So again, what's chita? What did the Gemara say? What's chita? Chita's Gemara. Chita's Gemara. So I will say, so perhaps what the Gemara is saying is like this, and this is a tremendous yisod. The Gemara says, Yom Tov Shel Atzeres Barur. If you have a day where you're having clarity in Torah, right? Atzeres is Shavuos. Shavuos is Matan Torah. If you're having a good day in your Ruchnius, Yom Tov, you're having a Yom Tov, you're having a good day, in Atzeres, in your Ruchnius, what do you do if you're having a good day in your Ruchnius? The Gemara says, Zaru Chitim. Plant even more wheat. Learn more Gemara. Learn more Torah. Ride the wave. There are moments that we experience of incredible and intense spirituality. The problem is that what sometimes happens is the wave of spirituality comes, wave of inspiration comes, and we don't do anything with it. We don't plug it in. We don't plug it in anywhere. I don't find a way to perpetuate. It's almost like these bookends, right? The first thing Achitofel is saying is, if you find yourself in the midst of machlokes, do not escalate, do not perpetuate. The other bookend to that is, if you find yourself in the midst of a spiritual awakening, plant wheat, learn Gemara, learn Torah, ride that wave, do something with it. So many times in life we're inspired and it's just easy come, easy go. We just don't plug it into anything. If you're in a good moment in life and you're feeling inspired and you're feeling good, plant more, do more, ride that wave, because at some point in time the feeling goes away. Ubi Yom Tov, Yom Tov, if you're having a good day, a day of inspiration, Shalat Saras, like a Shavuos, like a Matan Torah, Barur, and it's clear you have such personalistic spiritual clarity, Zaruchitim, do more, plant more. Life is all about pushing ourselves. And in these moments of inspiration, which come, again, for some of us, they come more frequently, less frequently, ride the wave. Do it. Do something with it. Don't allow it to simply dissipate. Incredible. Mar Zutra Amar. So again, obviously, there's a literal understanding of this as well, which is an agricultural understanding of this, which is if it's a clear day on Shavuos, that's a good omen for the wheat season. Mar Zutra says, no, it doesn't mean clear. It's not barur, it's balul, cloudy. Cloudy weather is actually a better omen for the season. Itmar Aminar Doi Mished Rabbi Yaakov Lo Barar Barar Mamish V'Lo Balo Balo Mamish. It doesn't mean literally cloudy or literally sunny or literally sunny, literally cloudy. Ela Afilu Balol V'Ruach Tzevonis Min Hashafto Zehu Barar. Rather, even if it's a cloudy day, but there's a northern wind that is blowing, that's considered to be a clear day for the purposes of wheat planting. Incredible. Amar Rabbi Abba Rav Ashi, Anan ad Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi masnin Allah. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi, this is beautiful. Matzi Yom Tov ha'achron shel Chag, on the last day of Sukkot. So Matzi Yom Tov ha'achron shel Chag, on the last day of Sukkot. Hakol Sof, so remember again, the Sukkot is the rainy season, right? So again, even though we don't want rain over the course of Sukkot, but remember again on Shmini Atzeres, that's when we recite Tefillah of Geshem, the prayer for rain. So on the last day of Sukkot, right? Motzei of Sukkot, Hakol Sof in the Ashtam Rachbos is so beautiful. Everyone would look at the smoke coming off of the Mizbeach. Right, so remember again, the Ma'aracha, there was a constant fire burning on the Mizbeach, the Ish Tam and Tukadbo, there was a constant fire, and there was obviously smoke always coming up from the Ma'aracha, from the pyre on the Mizbeach. Watch this. So on Motzei Yom Tov Achron, so we'll say, so now, it's the beginning of the rainy season, so now, again, everybody wants to see what kind of rainy season is it going to be this year. So everybody looked at the smoke coming off of the Ma'aracha. Not a klapei tzafon. So if the smoke went towards the north, so if the smoke went towards the north, what does that mean? That means there was a southern wind, right? If it went towards the north, there was a southern wind. So aniyim smechim. So the poor were happy. Why? Ubali batim atzavin, and the balabatim, the balabatim were sad. Why? So I said because that showed that there was going to be a lot of rain that year. Now a lot of rain is good, but also a lot of rain is problematic. Why? Because that means there's a lot of moisture. When there's a lot of moisture, you can't store produce. If you can't store produce, that means you have to sell everything. If you have to sell everything, that means you're flooding the market. And if you're flooding the market, it means low prices. Low prices. So the balabatim aren't happy with that because the maisa less profit. The poor are incredibly happy for that because that means lower prices. Not the klapi darum. If the smoke shifted southward, then aniyim atzam balabatim smechem. Then the aniyim are sad, but the balabatim are happy. Why? Because that shows there will be little rain. I will say now that Rashram points out over here, it doesn't mean little rain or less rain. It means there would be more than enough rain to produce proper bounty, but not too much rain so that there's too much moisture to store the produce. So that means you could store produce, and obviously with stored produce, what can you do? Timed release. Timed release, right? What the balabatim want is they don't want to flood the market. What they want to do is be able to hold on to produce and release it strategically throughout the season. So peros mishtamrin, and right, because ultimately, again, that means they could store produce. Store produce means higher prices. Balabatim are happy, aniyim are sad. Not a klapi mizrach. What if it blew towards the east? Hakol smechin. Everybody was happy because apparently, again, I will say towards the east is like the right balance. Right balance. That just enough rain that you can't store too much, but enough. But again, not too much moisture that you can store some, and therefore, again, prices are high enough to make a profit, but also low enough that everything is still affordable. Beautiful. The Gemara says, not a klapi mizrach hakol smechin, good. Klapi marav hakol tzav. Klapi mizrach hakol smechin. Klapi marav hakol atzavin. If the smoke blew towards the west, everybody would be upset. Why? Because that showed that there would be a lack of rain. Now, obviously, if there's a lack of rain, everyone's upset because that means, again, not enough produce. Not enough produce means so the balabatim aren't making money or enough money. And obviously, for the poor, that's going to be much higher prices and inability, food scarcity. Or many of the Gemara is the kasha, mizrach as the olam yafeh. Ma'aravas the Olam Kasha. But we learned that the eastern wind is always good, and Ma'aravas, the western wind, is always bad. So the Gemara says, Ruach Tzifonis Yafa Lechitim, B'shah Sheviu Shlish. So ultimately, again, northern wind is good for wheat at a time that they have grown to 1/3 of their maturity. V'kasha Lezesim. And it's difficult for the olives when they've already blossomed. And on the other hand, a southern wind is difficult for wheat when they've reached 1/3 of their maturity, but good for olives when they have begin to blossom. And the easy way to remember this, the other way to remember this is the shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash was in the north, and the menorah was in the south. Now, what does that mean? I will say, because remember, the shulchan, bread, which comes from wheat, was in the north, which means northern wind is good for wheat. And the menorah, olive oil, which comes from olives, obviously, was in the south. Southern wind, good for olives. So the Gemara says, it's not a contradiction. Hai marbi didei, v'hai marbi didei. Lokashia halon v'haluhu. So I'll say, so again, hai marbi didei, v'hai marbi didei, which literally means this direction is good for what it needs, and this direction is good for what it needs. So it's no contradiction. Halon v'haluhu. So I'll say, there's no contradiction in which winds are beneficial. It's talking about two different geographic orientations. One is talking about Eretz Yisrael, and one is talking about Bava. If you take a look at the Rashbam, 3 lines up from the bottom. Halon libnei Bavel hashochel me'mitzula va'artzenu meluchleches ve'ino tzricha lematar kolkach lididan ma'isina braisa basraisa shema'arav es kasha lefi shema'ateres yoser midai libnei Bavel. Mizrach is Yafa. So we'll say Bavel had a lot more natural moisture. So Bavel, they did not need as much rain in order for the crops to be bountiful. And in fact, in Bavel, even regular rainfall would be detrimental. There's too much rain. So in Bavel, the Brisa that said that Halacha L'Maisa, that the Ruach Mizrachis was always good and the Dromis was bad, that's for Bavel. However, Ubraisa Kamaisa de Masni Ipchaluhu Libnei Eretz Yisrael Sha'arsim Gavot Tzricha Lemata Harbe. But the first Brisa about Eretz Yisrael. So we'll say, so again, the two Brisas which talking about the benefit or the detriment of different winds are not contradictory. Bavel and Eretz Yisrael needed two very different things. Eretz Yisrael needs a lot more rainfall, Bavel needs a lot less rainfall. Okay, beautiful. So let's go back there. Says the Gemara, Tanya B'Shal Omer, Yom Tov Shalat Zeres Barar Simya for the Chalashana. So we'll say along these same lines, very beautiful. So Yom Tov Shalat Zeres, Shavuos. If Shavuos is clear, right? Shavuos is a clear day. That is a good siman for the rest of the year. But remember again, Shavuos represented the beginning of the wheat season. So if Shavuos was clear, right, Shavuos had good weather, that was a good omen for the rest of the year. Amar Rav Zvid, Hayom Akam Drei Shas. Listen to this. So Rav Zvid said on Rosh Hashanah, if Rosh Hashanah is hot, it's a hot day Rosh Hashanah, that means that it's going to be a warm year. If Rosh Hashanah is cool, right, or cold, that's a siman that the rest of the year is going to be cold as well. I will say, by the way, you can understand this as well. You see this motif, by the way, with Rosh Hashanah, not just with actual physical temperature, but we see how what happens on Rosh Hashanah is a microcosm for the entire year, right? We know that the minhag brought down about not to take a nap on Rosh Hashanah, right? Why? Because again, a person doesn't want to have a sleepy year. We do so many simanim, right? Why do we do all the simanim? Simna mils on Rosh Hashanah. Why all of these significant omens? All of that is to set a tone for Rosh Hashanah. Now, what does that mean? Literally, what happens on Rosh Hashanah mirrors the rest of the year. Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'll tell you what it does mean, what everyone will agree it does mean is, whenever you start something new, the way you start sets the tone for the rest of the year. Sets the tone for the rest of the endeavor. So if a person starts Rosh Hashanah strong, does that mean the rest of the year is going to be strong? Maybe yes, maybe no, but there's certainly a better probability that you're going to be successful if you start strong. So you can even understand this over here. The Gemara says, The Gemara says, if Rosh Hashanah is hot, what does hot mean? If Rosh Hashanah is on fire, if Rosh Hashanah is inspired, right? If Rosh Hashanah is intense, then that sets a wonderful beginning for intensity and spiritual fire for the rest of the year. If Rosh Hashanah is cold, right, a little bit spiritually apathetic or indifferent, then unfortunately, again, there's a flawed start. And where there's a flawed start, unfortunately, again, that type of coldness, indifference, and apathy could spread throughout the years. Rabbi, I just want to point out something incredible. So this Gemara is teaching us that everything goes by the beginning. So I just want to point out that this is not just a din in Rosh Hashanah, this is a din in our daily lives. So much of how my day goes depends on how I start it. Depends on how I start it. And if you start strong, does it mean you're going to have a fully successful day? Maybe yes, maybe no. But there's certainly a better probability that if you start on fire, if you start strong, if you start with intensity, people say, we start early in the morning. And the truth is, there's different ways you could get started over here. You could drag yourself in. You could drag yourself in, which sometimes you just have no choice but to drag ourselves in, right? And running behind. And also, just to be honest, there's a moment again, this is not even Musar. This is just if I'm late to something, by definition, the experience is not the same, and the rest of the time is catch up. And the intensity is never there. It's just not. You're doing your own thing, whatever it is. I'll say, sometimes it's about starting strong. And if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to do it right. If I'm going to do it with hislavos, do it with commitment, do it right. Make it happen. If I'm already making the commitment to do something, then make it happen in all the right ways. Because if there's heat, if there's passion, if there's intensity, it changes everything afterwards. If there's coldness, apathy, lackadaisicalkeit, right? Then sometimes that just follows me throughout the rest of it also. So much of life is just getting things started in the right way. And if I get it moving in the right way, so many beautiful and incredible things follow afterwards. And if I get things kind of started it started, it's apathy is the wrong word, because it's not chashuv apathy, but that coldness, that lack of passion sometimes follows me into the rest of my day as well. If I'm going to start something, start it strong, because that strength, that intensity, that heat follows me through the rest of my day, through the rest of my year, into everything else that I'm doing. Incredible. So who cares? In other words, this is interesting. That if Rosh Hashanah is cold, Rosh Hashanah is hot, and then the rest of the year is going to be cold, the rest of the year is going to be hot. What does that matter? The Lord says it's beautiful. This is beautiful. So it matters to the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol. What's the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol? Top Rashbam, the tefillah shel Kohen Gadol. Shahayim ispalo b'yom kippurim shetiyeh shana zu geshuma u'shechuna v'yak lefia inyan shira b'Rosh Hashanah yispalo b'yom kippurim. I'm supposed to say, remember again, we actually reference this. The Gemara Masechtas Yoma discusses this idea. There's a shortened version of the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol in the Chazar Sashatz of Musaf on Yom Kippur. The Kohen Gadol would daven. He would daven in between the curtains of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and in it he would daven and he would say, and he would talk about the material needs of Klal Yisrael for the coming year. So it's incredible. So depending on what the weather was on Rosh Hashanah would dictate what the rest of the day was going to be. So if it was cold on Rosh Hashanah, he would say, we need a little bit more heat this year. It was hot on Rosh Hashanah, right? He would say, we need a little bit more coldness. So depending on what the weather was, that would go ahead. So which is incredible, by the way, because I don't know, I never thought about this before. We always kind of think that the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol was static, right? There was a script. Kamash on the Gemara says, no, there wasn't a script. This was a real heartfelt tefillah that was for the needs of the klal based on where they were. V'rava Amrav Nachman. So Rabbi says, remember again, our primary sugya over here was all about the matana v'shchimira, and is it daraisa or d'rabanan? So now we've been going with the idea up until now that it's always been doraisa. So now Rava said, matna shchimira midrabanan ba'alma. So no, matna shchimira is midrabanan. It's not doraisa, it's midrabanan. Shema titrof daito alav. We'll say, so in other words, this is not a doraisa. The matna shchimira is a rabbinic construct. It's a rabbinic construct. Why did Chazal go ahead and do this? Why did they do it? Because they were nervous. Again, the Rashbam has a couple of different girsos as to what this means, but we're just going to go with the bottom one. Chazal were concerned that if a shchimira didn't have an easy way to go ahead and transfer property, that Shema Tishrov Daito Alav, it would make him even more upset and exacerbate the severity of his situation. So in order to allow the Shechina to do what he has to do with minimal effort or pain, so the rabbis came along and created this construct called Matna Shechina. Mi Amar Rav Nachman Haki. Rav Nachman really say this. V'Amar Rav Nachman Avagav Damar Shmuel Mocher Shtar Chov Lechaveiro Chazer Umachlo Machol Ba'afilu Yoresh Machol. So we'll say, okay, so this is an interesting halacha over here. Let's at least begin this, and then we'll pick up with this tomorrow. So we'll say by tomorrow. Long on the base tomorrow. Sorry, we'll get there. So let's say, so remember again, so now, according to this approach of Rav Meir and Rav Nachman, halacha l'maisa, matna shchimera is not a da'oraisa. Instead, matna shchimera is a dirabanan. So the Gemara says, now, did Shmuel really say this? Because we'll say there is the following halacha. The halacha says as follows. Let's talk about this concept. Then we'll stop. We'll pick up with this tomorrow. Mirat Hashem. If I sell a debt to someone, right? I lent Ruvain money, and then I go. So Ruvain owes me $1,000. I sell the note to Shimon. So I say, interestingly enough, even though I sold the note, I have the ability to forgive the debt, which is a little bit crazy, right? But the logic is behind that, because at the end of the day, as much as I assigned collection of the note, I am still the lender, and therefore I retain the ability to forgive that note whenever. So the Gemara says, we'll pick up an answer with this case tomorrow. But again, switching gears now from the idea that the matan of a shchivmera is da'oraisa, to ultimately switching gears to the fact that it is a dirabanan in order to benefit the mental health of the shchivmera. Stop over here today. Resolution Mirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkoyach. All right, Chavran Zoom, have a great day, everyone.
Fridays or Mondays Wall Street Journal, because I read both yesterday. There was a whole thing about wills.
Yeah.
And if some woman didn't redo a will for like 20 years, and money went to her stepkids who had the picture for 20 years, but she didn't sign it. She wrote it, but it wasn't